Aliens Explored is a podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
The United States COVID relief bill from 2020 contained a clause requiring a government report on UFOs. On the 19th of March 2021, former Intelligence Director John Ratcliffe gave us some teasers about what we can expect to find. Join myself and Neil on Aliens Explored as we explore the announcements made by John Ratcliffe.
Hello listeners, and welcome back to Aliens Explored, your weekly look at the mysterious skies. I'm one of your hosts, Neil Kelly.
And I'm your other host, Stu Jackson.
So Stu, this week we're looking at what the former Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, has speculated or claimed we might be able to see when information is released under the forthcoming COVID bill.
Yeah, this is something I find quite exciting and surprising. That he's come forward and basically he's teased the sort of thing we can expect to see.
It's funny that the information's come out this way, isn't it? I mean, they created this COVID relief bill, which was something like 5,500 pages, and it looked like everyone with an agenda put something into it. And someone slipped in this thing that yes, we're going to get the intelligence agencies to release everything they have on UFOs.
It's really bizarre how it's come about, and we did so for our listeners' benefit, not so much yours now, but for our listeners' benefit, we did go into this in some detail when it came out quite a while ago now. I'm trying to think what episode it would have been. Because it was
back in December, wasn't it, that the $2.3 trillion appropriations bill went through?
Yes, absolutely.
And
this was
the Washington Post described it as a bureaucratic nesting doll. That contained all sorts of things, and contained the Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2021, which itself carried an unusual provision that its committee comment section beneath the understated heading "Advanced Aerial Threats." That's what they're heading it.
Well, for more details on this actual COVID bill and the release of the information, our listeners can go back to episode 29 of Aliens Explored, where we did discuss that in length. And indeed, we made a commitment back then that we are going to revisit this. And in fact, our intention is to revisit this just after this 180 days is up. So that would put us on episode 50, so we don't have that long to wait. We're going to explore doing possibly a live episode then, but I'm not making any guarantees.
Right.
We will see, but possibly a live episode for episode 50 for that. But yeah, in the meantime, this was it was done almost casually in an interview basis. So I think a bit more information about John Ratcliffe. He was, as you rightly say, he was the Intelligence Director in the Trump administration for the final 8 months of the administration. He has said publicly as well that he wanted to get this information out, this UFO information out, and declassify it previously, but basically ran out of time. He wasn't able to do so. And that ties in a little bit with another episode that we covered, episode 25. Do you remember when we talked about Hayam Eshed?
Yes, he's stuck his oar in with this, hasn't he? I saw it.
Has he? Oh, right. I'm unaware of that.
Yeah, there's a Jerusalem Post article about John Ratcliffe.
Well, we'll come to that in just a moment. So this is just really for the listeners to remind them. Again, this is episode 25 of Aliens Explored. We're talking about Hayam Eshed, who was he was intelligence for the Israeli government, wasn't he?
Yes.
And he said that yes, the aliens are in contact with us, and in fact Donald Trump, so this is kind of the bit I'm alluding to, he said specifically that Donald Trump wanted to make the whole UFO and alien the alien contact thing public, but he was stopped basically by the aliens. they always put a gagging order on him.
In fact, he even mentioned the Galactic Federation, didn't he? Eshed?
He did, yes. That's how he described the organisation.
It's in this latest Jerusalem Post article. Eshed insisted that Trump is aware of extraterrestrial life and that he was, quote, on the verge, unquote, of disclosing its existence. However, the Alien Galactic Federation reportedly stopped him from doing so, saying they wished to prevent mass hysteria since they felt humanity needed to, quote, evolve and reach a stage where we will, quote, ... something missing, understand what space and spaceships are, unquote.
Indeed, and we go into some detail of that, like I say, in episode 3. So there's a lot of references to previous episodes here, listeners. I'm sure that's something that's going to happen as we develop the podcast and we go into more and more things. There's going to be more and more references to previous episodes. But yeah, so you say he's come public on this information about John Ratcliffe.
This is an article, a Jerusalem Post article about the John Ratcliffe report, and of course it quotes Eshed as well.
Oh, it's doing the same as what we're doing, which is basically
pretty much doing the same.
Pulling the two things together, right? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I thought you were saying he'd said something publicly about John Ratcliffe. Okay. So I think, the fact that John Ratcliffe, who was handpicked by Trump, wanted to pull this information out. We've heard that Trump wanted to pull this information out. Then it appears in this COVID relief bill. Yeah, this really does. I think we can take quite a lot of legitimacy from these people.
Now, what were they saying in the relief bill? Because it was about the advanced aerial threats. So, is it about? Here, let's spill all the beans about Area 51 and all our contacts with extraterrestrials and the Galactic Federation, or are we going to release all the information we can about what we perceive as might be basically our an air defence summary?
It's so the COVID bill clause, as I'm going to call it, probably inaccurately, but hey, for ease of use, the COVID bill clause, it doesn't say we just need to release everything that's out there. It does specifically say they need a report on the declassified information that's out there. So it's more like, well, okay, you've got all this stuff that's out there and available. Let's sort of bring it into one place and let's have a fundamental report about it. Now, declassified doesn't necessarily mean that it's in the public domain, of course. And as ex-military intelligence, you'd know far more about this than I do. But certainly that's my understanding of it. Is declassified doesn't mean to say it's been released, just that it could be if asked for.
And classified doesn't mean it's not in the public realm.
Okay.
A lot
just
of,
means they can't talk about it.
yeah, well, no, yeah, they can't talk about it. I mean, there might be an awful lot of stuff you think, well, this isn't secret. I've read about it in the papers. But it's the fact that our agencies are taking an interest in it that's more classified, or the connections they've made between things that are classified. But all the individual elements aren't. So I mean, things like a UFO, if that's been cited by a member of the public, it starts out in the public domain, and it's up to the government to come in and kind of close the circle of knowledge and stop the information spreading or discredit it or whatever. If the UFO is spotted by a Navy pilot and no one else, or an Air Force pilot or whatever, then they can shut that down much more easily, can't they? They can just tell the pilot, you're not saying anything about this to anyone.
Right. Well, it's very interesting that you cite that as an example, because that actually ties in quite nicely with what John Ratcliffe has said we can expect from this COVID bill. So as part of this interview, it was really quite interesting. He said that there are far more UFOs recorded by US military pilots and satellites than the public is actually aware of. So straight away, we now know that the government has been collecting this information. Which is unsurprising in of itself, but the fact that there's been all this deniability going on for so many years, it is of interest that he would say that. I think, but he's and let's remember, as Intelligence Director, he would have had access to some pretty classified information. He would have had access to some really sensitive information. And he has said in this interview, he said that these UFOs conduct actions that are difficult to explain. They move in a way that is hard to replicate and that we do not have the technology to do. I mean, that's a very damning statement right there. And one of the things he cites as an example of that is exceeding the sound barrier without making a sonic boom. Now that ties in with a lot of UFO reports we hear about, or even that there is, albeit grainy, video footage of, where you'll see a light in the sky and it suddenly it zips away at incredibly high speed all of a sudden. And yes, there's no sonic boom, but it does seem to be moving at supersonic speeds. Altitude must be a factor for making a sonic boom, because it's caused by air molecules building up in front of the moving object, isn't it? And they become compressed, and then suddenly it breaks through them and it goes boom. That's how I understand it happens. So if you're at a very, very high altitude, you're not going to. The air is much thinner. You can probably go an awful lot faster. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. But if you were that high in altitude, would you be visible from the ground?
If you were I suppose, I don't know how big you'd have to be. I mean, a satellite is visible from the ground on a clear Texas night. They can see satellites going over, can't they?
Oh, that's true. That's true.
They're not particularly big.
That is fair enough. But John Ratcliffe. Intelligence Director John Ratcliffe has said that there are vehicles that can exceed the sound barrier without something, but he doesn't say at certain altitudes. The implication is that they've found a way of bypassing making a sonic boom.
Well, we know how to bypass making a sonic boom by just being very, very high up in the atmosphere.
Okay. Yeah. But it implies. He's citing this as an example of things we don't have the technology to do.
Yeah. Now, I'm wondering what the slant of this report is going to be, or what the focus is going to be on, because in a July interview, that's what, I'm not counting months ago, 8 months ago, Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. He was vice chair of the Intelligence Committee. said that the prospect of something otherworldly being behind the flying objects doesn't concern him as much as the idea that a US adversary could be making secret technological advances. So I'm wondering if the focus could be, well, we don't know what this thing is, but we've ascertained that it's not Russian or Chinese or North Korean, so we're not worried about it.
It could well be.
That's as far as we looked. We just made sure that it's nothing they're able to do.
Yeah. As you were delivering that quote, I had in mind the Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, when he's seeing the chances of anything coming from Mars are 1,000,000 to 1. He said. So that popped into my head there. Apologies to our listeners for my attempts at singing.
But I suppose, you know, if the Chinese or the Russians developed major technological advances, that they could make craft that couldn't be shot down, that were completely impervious to American air defences, were able to completely outfly anything the Americans can put up in the sky. And that's also a definite adversary, isn't it? That's someone who you could end up in a shooting war with.
Yes.
With the drop of a diplomatic gaffe. But if it's extraterrestrial, then you just don't know. You've no reason to think they're going to attack. Unless you're judging them by our own standards.
Well, especially if you've already had lots of meetings with them and you've got a treaty or a pact with them. Yes, as indeed has been speculated. I mean, it's an interesting point about, you know, what angle will this COVID bill clause come in. I mean, I try not to be cynical about things, although it does creep out. Coming. There is a big but coming, and in this case, I also think that the government will say, we are going to release all the information we have on XYZ, so that they can then say they've given you everything, even though there's no evidence to support. Like, you know, if they turn around and said, right, we're making public all our UFO documents, all our UFO studies, everything we've got is all going to be made public, and everything's made public, and it turns out actually, all right, there's a few unexplained things, but there's nothing really to worry about. There's no evidence of the government being in collusion with aliens or anything like that. How do we know that they actually have released all the information? It might be a disinformation exercise.
Now, there was something about that in the Washington Post. About how the intelligence services might react, because they've got until June to deliver their write-up to the lawmakers. 2 factors might delay the report's release, according to the Post. Agencies have missed similar congressional reporting deadlines in the past, and the provision isn't technically binding because the language was included in the Senate Intelligence Committee's report on the bill and not on the bill itself. So, I mean, it's not a statute, but agencies generally treat report language as bill language, according to one senior senator familiar with the legislation. So they might not do it. But yeah, I'm really expecting them to say, well, we've got all this information. This is the stuff we've got theories about that we think we can explain in terms of atmospherics or natural phenomena, and these are the things we can't explain. I'm not expecting anyone to come forward and say, yes, we've been in touch with the Galactic Federation and they've been keeping a close eye on us, and they're going to be making their appearance very evident or very, very, very soon and very, very publicly.
Yes, I absolutely. But do you also remember we did an episode about movies and Hollywood? This was our Halloween special last year.
Yeah.
And I put foot out, so I shared my theory that actually the governments of the world are slowly acclimatizing the public to this idea that there are, that aliens exist, basically, and are visiting the planet and what have you. And it's this slow acclimation. This statement from John Ratcliffe could very easily be part and parcel of that. It's drip feed of information that we just start to take on board. If you imagine if an intelligence director, right, 50 years ago, so 1971, an intelligence director had publicly said, well, yes, the government are well aware of vehicles that can do things that we're technologically incapable of. Here's some examples of that. And there's a lot more UFOs out there than the public's actually aware of. Can you imagine how utterly shocking that revelation would be? Yet today, he said that. That's quite interesting. It's not shocking like it should be. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, but I think people were still just as cynical, or even more so actually in 1971. They thought, well, why is he going on about UFOs? We want to hear about his latest fuck up in Vietnam. Is that what he's trying to distract us from?
Well, yes. And certainly the media have been well known for using distraction techniques, especially here in the UK.
Well, that's what our royal family's for, isn't it? That's their sole purpose.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel it's not being made as big a thing of as it perhaps should be.
I think, but as you say, there is a sort of cynicism. People are saying, oh yeah, right, okay, well, we'll believe it when I see it. They say they're going to release some information about UFOs. Yeah, what's it going to be really? That there won't be this big revelation that they're going to say, well, we've been in touch with aliens and we've got to know them quite well, and they will be coming out into the open soon. But I do believe in this acclimatization. This, I remember reading once that people can more readily imagine an alien invasion or a zombie apocalypse or the end of the world. They can imagine that more readily than they can imagine a different economic arrangement. They can imagine doing things slightly differently, creating a society that is a bit fairer, that where companies aren't just trying to make shared dividends with their shareholders. They're actually serving some useful purpose, and that sort of a Jeremy Corbyn vision. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn was just totally, or Bernie Sanders, they're totally, people actually cannot grasp, or they refuse to believe. They cannot even listen to people like Corbyn or Bernie Saunders, because that you're just talking nonsense. You're talking wild stuff. Yeah, UFOs. Yeah, fine with that. Or zombie apocalypse. Yeah, I'm on board with that. But no, the whole thing about changing our economic arrangements, getting rid of poverty. We can't envisage that.
Because the media tells them. Yeah,
because there's been no acclimatization to it. There's no one making. It probably doesn't make for a very good movie about creating an economically fairer society. Whereas an alien invasion does make a good movie. I mean, I don't think movies where the aliens arrive in peace, they're fewer and further between, aren't they? I mean, you've got Close Encounters of the Third Time, the third kind, the third time.
Yeah.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There was
The Day the Earth Stood Still.
The Day the Earth Stood Still, and the remake.
Oh, the remake was appalling.
Was it? I won't bother with it. I remember really enjoying the first one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a classic movie. And do you know what? When we talk about, aliens being in collusion with governments and one day revealing themselves, that is the go-to image that I have in my head, is this, this spaceship landing on the White House and then coming down and yes, we've come in peace. Hello. kind of thing. Obviously, looking a bit different. We now know through Hollywood that they are going to look like the grey aliens, with the big black almond-shaped eyes. But yeah, okay. Well, let's summarise what we think about John Ratcliffe then. So Neil, do you think he is a credible source for this? Do you think we can take what he's saying at face value?
I think the 4 words or 5 words hand-picked by Donald Trump kind of destroy a lot of my confidence in him.
Okay, so why do you think he's come out and said this in this interview?
I mean, it was in the dying days of the Trump administration. I mean, he probably... When did he say this? This was
very
March.
Recently. This was,
Yeah.
We're still in March now. It was, as we're recording this, 10 days ago. So this was, the 19th of March.
So he's already the former National Intelligence Director. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So,
he was actually Intelligence Director for 8 months. The final 8 months of the Trump administration.
Yeah, so he can pretty much say what he wants, can't he? And without any... If it was the current Intelligence Director of the US, I'd be taking it a lot more seriously.
Well, no, they're still bound by the official secrets, or whatever the American equivalent of that is. And no, there are some very strict penalties.
But
you still commit treason by sharing stuff you shouldn't. But
he hasn't shared anything really. He's just saying, frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. That's not really giving away any secrets. It's
saying that there are vehicles out there that can do manoeuvres and actions that we do not have the technology to do. That's a bold statement.
It's a bold statement, but I don't think it comes classed as classified information.
No, he's probably not quite crossing the line, but I think certainly in my view he's coming very, very... He's skirting the edges.
If he started making comparisons and talking in terms of what current US military aerial capabilities are, then yeah, he's crossing a line there.
Sure, but what I'm saying is, and okay, I take on board. You find him, because of his associations, less than credible. But what motivation, what reasons would he have to make this up in this interview?
Yeah, why would he say something like that? I mean, it's no longer his job. Do we know that it was Ratcliffe who put this clause into the bill? So
no, it was not him.
But he let it go through. I mean, I can imagine a bill of 5,500 pages going through in a fairly short time to deal with a national emergency. People were putting in all sorts of, putting in all their own agendas, for large part because they thought this bill isn't going to be properly scrutinised. It's going to be like the Brexit bill. No one's really got time to read it before they've got to agree to it.
Okay, we differ slightly there. I believe it would have been scrutinised very heavily not by one person, but by teams of people, and
yeah, but
5,000 pages sounds like a lot, but actually, if you've got 50 people working on it,
but if they can only scrutinise their own little bits of it, and if it was actually the people who put it in who had the job of scrutinising it, then a document that size, all sort of 5,500 pages. I mean, that's a library.
That's more speculation than I could answer. But I come back to my original question. What would he have to gain by making it up?
I don't know why he'd be saying it now. I don't know why he's saying these things.
Well, he's been asked basically, what can we expect to find when this report comes out? And I mean, to summarise my own thoughts, I believe he has just answered pretty honestly. I get what you're saying about the association, and certainly I've got no love for the Trump administration or the man himself, or his close associates. But at the same time, just because these people are liars doesn't mean to say everything they say is a lie.
No.
There's a line there.
Yeah.
No, I think, he is genuinely speculating based on the information he has had access to on what we can expect to find. Like I say, I think he skirts dangerously close to, giving away a bit too much information, but he doesn't quite cross. He's not talked about any specific events, but he certainly would have been aware of them.
But I do think the whole slant of the report is going to be, don't mess with the USA, because we've got, technologically we're superior to anything else on this planet. We'll blast you out the sky. Nothing can touch us from this planet.
Well, that is definitely an interesting perspective, and listener, you will have to stick with us to episode 50 to find that out, when we will be exploring that report. And you know what, that brings us on quite nicely to the end there. So yeah, I get your cynicism. Like I said, I'm quite a cynical person myself, especially where politics is involved. But no, I think we can. This is one of our agree to disagree.
Yeah, but I'm still fascinated to see what they're going to come out with. What it's going to be.
Very excited to see. Very excited to see. And what do you think, listeners? Is John Ratcliffe telling a load of porkies just for attention, or some other nonsense like that? Or, can we take him at his word? Do let us know what you think by the usual means of Twitter and Facebook. You can find us by searching Aliens Explored, or by visiting aliensexplored.com. Don't forget to join us next time. Oh, I'm very excited about this, Neil.
We're back on the pet topic, aren't we?
We are my favourite subject. We are going to be talking about the crop circles that came up and appeared during 2020. So this is during the pandemic year, or the first pandemic year, as it's now turning out to be. And it's going to be very, very interesting. I'll be giving you a bit of a report on what happened. Because you might remember when we did the crop circle episode originally, Neil, I said to you, I speculated that it'd be interesting to see if crop circles are affected by the pandemic. We'll be finding out next week. Something to look forward to. So, in the meantime, listeners, keep watching those interviews with ex-intelligence directors and the skies. Take care. See you next time.
Looking forward to it. See you then.
Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored, or visit us on aliensexplored.com.